Hello and welcome to a very special program. This is the fourth year of the DRGO NDTV Road to Safety campaign, and it's a project that is very close to our hearts here in NDTV. And the reason we do this year after year is to try and spread awareness on a subject which really needs to be discussed a lot more. And in as much as we've done stories and we've done projects, we always have felt that we need to continue and we need to sustain this campaign, because the ultimate goal over here is simple. The goal is to save lives. How you actually do that when it comes to an issue as difficult and complicated as road safety means looking at multifaceted issues. And why are we doing this? So let me just tell you a few statistics. And there are so many statistics that it's frankly bewildering. But consider a handful. Since 2008, more than 55,000 children in our country have lost their lives in road accidents. At least 413 people on an average die in road accidents, not in a year, not in a month, not in a week, but every single day. And that's astounding. And it is perhaps the single worst statistic, but a true reflection of where we are in this country when it comes to road safety. And how does this impact not just lives, and we'll be talking about that, but also our economy? Well, road accidents, according to some statistics, account for 3% of our GDP every year. 3% of our GDP lost every year, because a lot goes in terms of losing manpower, of men, women, children, the next generation who could be contributors to our growth process. We have a wonderful panel today. I'd like to introduce the panel. Firstly, we've got Nitin Gadkari, the Minister of Road Transport and Highways. He joins us. We are also joined by Navdeep Singh Mehran. He's the Head of Sustainability at DRGO India and a partner of ours for many years. T. Krishna Prasad is the Director General of Police in Telangana, someone with decades of experience in policing, and road safety is an area that he's looked at very closely. Rakhi Dandona is Additional Professor at the Public Health Foundation of India. Professor Geetam Tiwari is Head of Department of the Transportation Research and Injury Prevention Program at IIT Delhi. Piyush Tiwari is the founder of the Save Life Foundation, one of the most dedicated people you'll find in this country when it comes to the cause of trying to spread awareness and ultimately to try and save lives when it comes to road accidents. And Ravinder Singh is a young author and somebody who's showing a great deal of courage in choosing to come onto this program. He lost his fiancée to a road accident a decade back, and your father also had a terrible road accident a few years back. I'd like to thank all of you very much for being with us. Mr. Gadkari, let me come to you first. And this is an issue which we perhaps haven't focused on enough in our last few years: road design and engineering. Now, there is a direct link between the poor construction of roads and the poor design of roads and fatalities in road accidents. But you are involved in perhaps India's most ambitious program to build roads and highways in this country. What have you done, sir, to ensure that road engineering is something that you've looked at to ensure that the roads that we are now building result in fewer lives lost?
Previously, actually, I accepted that there was not very much planning in road engineering. But now from last 3 years, 4 years, we are taking strong decisions. Now we are improving DPR, detailed project reports. We have identified the black spots named as accidental spots. We are spending 12,000 crore for improvement of 786 black spots. Previously, there was a policy for economic viability. In some of the project, the department, the ministry and the NH has taken a decision to drop underpass, flyover, but that was not correct. It is really very, very dangerous to the life of the people. And every year we are facing at least 5 lakhs accidents and 1,50,000 deaths. Now we have a highest priority to how we can save the life of the people. And now in the new DPR, detailed project reports, we are giving highest priority for road safety. Even I have taken a decision, if suppose the DPR is faulty and if the accident taken place, then it will be responsibility going to the person, company who is making DPR. So today we are very cautious about it and we are very strict about it. We want to save the life of the people and we are already moving towards the very, very systematic technical planning in the road construction.
So that's welcome. That's fantastic to know, and hopefully it will make an impact in the years to come. But ultimately, the quality of roads is one thing. The quality of drivers is something completely different. And as we've seen in our country for decade upon decade, just possessing a driving license alone is no real certificate of a person's ability to drive. And the task of actually training drivers, of educating them in how to drive in a safer manner seems overwhelming. We have millions of drivers. So in as much as you look at roads, what are you doing to look at licensing and driver education?
In our country, it is the fact that we have more than 30% bogus licenses. Actually, the transport is a subject in a concurrent list, and there is full control of state government on this system. Unfortunately, India is a country where you can get easily driving license. Now, by new Motor Vehicle Act, which is prepared by taking all suggestions from the state governments, and transport minister belongs to a different political party. Then with the help of World Bank, we have studied the law of USA, Canada, then UK, Singapore and Germany. On the basis of that, we have prepared this act. Now act is passed in the parliament, and now it is with the Rajya Sabha. I am expecting this session we will get clearance from it. In this act, there is a provision. There we are going to open 2,000 driving training schools. Already we have up to 100 driving training schools in the country. There is a track, and by computer will take the examination of driver, and he declare pass या fail. No human error is there. And then that computer, that whatever the test result will be, that will immediately pass to RTO office. Then RTO, it is mandatory for him to give him license within 3 days. Now this system is very scientific. And second thing, we are preparing the e-data of driving licenses. The person who is taking driving license in Maharashtra, he is taking other license in Punjab, other in Andhra Pradesh. So now everywhere the data will be there. It will not be easy. It will be linked to Aadhaar, and that is the reason that there will be no chance for anybody to make any furgy licenses. At the same time, we are taking preventive measures. For particularly in India, we have 22 lakh of drivers, shortage of 22 lakh of drivers, and now we are making the training. That training will be very useful, and I feel that there are the big manufacturing company, they are coming forward and they have started their training centers, and in due course of time we will create employment to the people. And our priority is to open this training center, driving center in the backward area, tribal area, and the rural area, the agriculture sector, where more employment is needed. And I feel that by this passing this act into Rajya Sabha, we will get the right, and we will definitely going to improve the situation.
Okay, we'll come back to Mr. Nitin Gadkari in a little while from now, but I just want to move on to our panelists. Ravinder, let me come to you. When you lose somebody as close as a fiancé in a road accident, it's a life-altering experience. It changes everything. What made you decide to come on this program?
It's been 11 years. I lost my then girlfriend, and I do remember I was a die-hard romantic person. On 14th of February, which was my then planned engagement ceremony, I was holding that wedding ring and standing on the other side of the ICU, waiting for her to come back and talk to me. It never happened. She never got a chance to say goodbye. So when it all happened, the way things unfolded, it was traumatic. 10 years down the line, I still see that I wake up in the morning reading about so many accidents that would have happened on the roads of our country last night. So certainly nothing has changed, or perhaps if things have changed, it's not to the point that I can feel that tomorrow somebody is going out on road, he or she is safer. And that's the reason I chose to not only come here, but also write books and stories on the fact if we can change something on the roads of our country.
Mr. T. Krishna Prasad, there's so much to talk on this subject, but let me ask you this, as a police officer, you would have first-hand seen almost on a daily basis, you and the men and women that you command, you know, how lives in the blink of an eye, you know, get demolished, get destroyed. You know, I mean, is that something we don't in this country understand enough, the danger of how lives get destroyed in a flash of a second, accidents happen in a flash of a second, and the human toll on families, bread earners dying, losing children, it's catastrophic, it destroys a family system. Isn't that what we are really talking about?
Vishu, ever since we just started talking, and in the last 15 minutes, India has already seen 15 road accidents, and in which 5 people have already died. So this is the magnitude and the scale we are talking about. And when we analyzed, the scientists and the analysts told us that majority of the road accidents in this country are happening because of human error. And among the human errors, the biggest one is about the driver's mistakes. So we have analyzed all these things, and we said, if it is a human error, why don't we educate our own people? Why don't we correct our own behavior as a stakeholder and as a road user? So that appears to be the biggest challenge. And I'm grateful to Honorable Minister who just now told us that large number of few thousands of training schools are going to be opened in the country. Now, if you see, Vishu, when we are talking about training, what do we do in training? We impart knowledge, skill, and attitude. Knowledge and skill, fine. Computer stimulation takes place everywhere in training. That is okay, I have no complaints. But I have a complaint largely on the attitude side, particularly when you know that majority of the road accidents are happening because of the human error, because of the errors caused by the drivers. So it is basically the attitude.
Piyush, let me come to you next. You know, one of the points that he was talking about is attitudes. And is that in your work one of the biggest problems or difficulties that you encounter, that there is an attitude among people that it won't happen to me, and then it does. It happens to a friend, it happens to a family member. How key is it in your own work to try and change attitudes, basic attitudes?
Oftentimes in India, you know, human behavior is blamed for crashes. You know, the fact that at the very base, crashes are not even investigated properly. You know, we can't really say what how much of human error was actually at play there. Human beings are fallible; they will always make some sort of an error. But what we have to see is the system in which they are operating, especially the roads on which they are driving or walking, or the vehicles in which they are operating. Are they safe? Are they designed in a way that error will not be rewarded with a death or an injury? That is becoming increasingly important, and I think the shift in behavior has to happen at the systemic level as much as it has to happen at the operator level, which is the driver or the pedestrian.
Raki, you were telling me before we started this program about how the focus in this country tends to be fixed more on the transport sector. How many more roads, how many more cars, how will people move from A to B, and it's less on how people are potentially suffering, as it's not looked at as a health issue per se. Yep. Do you think that again that is something that affects our policy and our thinking?
It does, and if I could take a minute and
Yes.
explain that. When we look at two things in terms of attitude, and that is related to why we don't see it as a health issue per se, we see it as a transport issue, is we call it as road accident. An accident means that the notion is it's inevitable and hence not preventable. For a very long time within the research in injuries, the scientific field, we have replaced that word accident with crash. So it's a road traffic crash, and the minute you say crash, the idea is that you can actually prevent a crash from happening. So that notion has within the science changed for a very long time, but we haven't changed that in our system here yet. So that attitude would go a long way in saying that we can actually do something about them.
Yeah.
And when you bring prevention in, that's when you get the health in. And if you just talk of numbers, you mentioned the numbers, how many people die in those road crashes every day. that number for 2016 is way more than what you mentioned. The projected number is actually 2.5 lakh people die every year, which is about 700 a day. It is way more than 400, which was in 1990. So we've actually gone way beyond what, instead of coming down, we've actually gone up.
Now, is that, Piyush, also a number that you see? It's more than 413 at this stage?
Yeah, so as per the government data, it is 413 per day.
Right.
But what we do agree with completely is that there is a massive amount of underreporting. And I think what PHFI has done is that they've quantified that underreporting and added that layer to that 1,51,000
How have you been able
number.
to add that number? Because the difference between 413 and more than 700, what you're saying, is huge. It's almost, you know, I mean, it's getting to double that. How have you accounted for that underreporting? It's a key statistic.
Right. So this was work done in collaboration with ICMR recently as part of Global Burden of Disease study, which is when you correct for the underreporting of certain disease conditions, including injuries. So road crashes were part of that. So there are population level data available as to how many crashes do not get to the police and how many deaths do not get to the police. So you correct for that level of underreporting and then project the number.
Right.
So that is how this new number is way more than what we actually think could be. So the number could be anywhere between 100,000 here, 100,000 there. But the point is that the number is huge enough and we cannot continue to ignore it.
Yeah.
But when it comes to health, we are not looking at the numbers in the right way. If I were to convert this number into how many people die every per 1 lakh population, let's say it's 23. That doesn't sound like a big number. You know, India is a big country, 23 people per lakh population die, so what? But when you look at who are the ones who are dying, these are young people, 15 to 44 years age group. So this is young, productive age group people who are losing their lives, that is why your 3% GDP comes into play. So they haven't even gotten to live their life yet. So that 23 perspective changes by years lost into about 185 years are lost for that 1 lakh population.
Right.
But if I add disability to it, so about 2 million people are disabled in India every year because of road crashes, that becomes over 1,000 years lost because of either death or disability in that 1 lakh population.
Yeah.
So that is huge, and that's why
and disability is an issue that people don't. In fact, you were telling me that just a few recently, in fact, you know, I mean, of course, a decade back, you lost your fiancé. Your father met with a serious accident, and he's disabled now as a result.
That's
what
right.
happened? I mean, if you could.
He lost his right leg above knee, so everything came to stand still. He was an independent man, but ever since this accident happened, fortunately, we were able to save his life, and he was there in the hospital for 51 days. But then,
how were you able to save his life?
The accident happened in a village. From a village, he was transported to a village hospital. The ambulance took another 2 hours. We missed the golden time period. One hospital rejected. It went to the next hospital in town, and this happened very close to Chandigarh. And I was here in Delhi. So by the time I could reach out to him, the entire night was passed, and he was bleeding in PGI, kept on a stretcher in the morning. So 14 hours later, the doctor said nothing at all, that will we be able to save him or not. Only 5 days, 3 surgeries, a lot of B negative blood, which is a rare group. Later they said he will survive, but we cannot save his limb.
Right.
So he underwent so many surgeries. By the time we had to part way with his limb. But the life that he is living today, he did not want that life. No. He's completely dependent on me right now. Of course, we talk about prosthetic, we talk about medical science and engineering and everything. But then at 65, he is now living a different life, and he hates to live that.
Quality of life goes down dramatically.
Yeah.
Mr. Prasad, let me ask you a little bit about the golden hour. How is that such an important part of the training of the policemen and the police women that you command, that when they see somebody who's injured, that they have to get them to hospital within an hour? But that becomes so difficult given the traffic on our roads. But how important is that?
I think quite a considerable percentage of the casualties in road crashes, I put it directly proportional to the absence of the principle of golden hour. As far as the training is concerned, the police men, the officers and the constables are trained about the golden hour. They are conscious about the golden hour. Now the question is, when 50% and more accidents are actually taking place on the highways, away from the city, and again 60% of the accidents are actually happening on the non-urban areas. How to reach the victim or the patient quickly to the referral hospital is one challenge that literally in the entire country we are working against. We did an experiment in Hyderabad Vijayawada Road along with the General Insurance Council, where we have positioned certain dedicated ambulances on the highway. After 1 year study, we realized that the number of deaths, or what we measure in severity ratio, that is number of deaths per 100 accidents, came down drastically. So the bottom line is, if we make dedicated ambulances or ambulances available close enough to the highways, where more than 50% of casualties are taking place, we will bring down the severity rate drastically. This is my conclusion. This is what I have studied very closely in the last 2 years.